People all over the United States were shocked when Mike Wolfe was sentenced and led away in handcuffs. Everyone thought that he was arrested because of a fight over antiques or maybe a business issue with the History Channel. Breaking news says Wolfe was arrested because his former co-host Frank Fritz's death wasn't caused by natural causes as was first said. Instead, detectives now say it was murder with intent. According to medical accounts, Fritz was found with levels of drugs in his body that could have killed him. He was intentionally overdosed, and Wolfe was charged with murder because it was planned and not a mistake. It's hard to understand why you would drug a former business partner who trusted you fully. Some might even say it's bad. Many fans thought the fight between the two picks was just for TV ratings, but Wolfe was already in jail and facing serious charges for what prosecutors called a murder done out of jealousy and greed. However, there were reports on social media that Wolfe's charges were temporarily lowered while investigators gathered more proof. In another post, it was said that Wolfe was first arrested after an American Pickers team member left him at Fritz's house when he died. The Iowa State Police did a full investigation and found strong proof against Wolfe, such as his fingerprints on medicine bottles and strange text messages sent to Fritz. This led them to push for first-degree murder charges. There were problems with Frank Fritz's toxicology results, which led to the start of the investigation into his death. The stated cause of his death was complications from a stroke, but the autopsy showed that he had dangerously high levels of prescription drugs in his body, levels that were much higher than what would have been recommended for his condition. This raised red flags right away, especially since Fritz had been very good about taking his medicine as prescribed while he was recovering. In secret, the Iowa State Police began looking into who had access to Fritz in his last hours. What they found shocked even officers who had done this before. Wolfe's car was seen arriving at the house late at night on security video from Fritz's neighborhood, about 3 hours before the police were called. By late that night, Wolfe had called 911 to say that he had gone to check on his old friend and found him not responding. When rescuers got there, Fritz wasn't moving or responding, and there was no pulse. People tried to bring him back to life but failed, and he was declared dead at the scene. At first it seemed like it had something to do with his previous stroke, but the lab results showed otherwise. People who were investigating were especially suspicious of Wolfe's actions right after Fritz died. He didn't grieve as one might think. Instead, he moved quickly to take control of Fritz's collection and intellectual property. Within 48 hours, he talked to Fritz's lawyers about buying the rights to use his name and picture on American Pickers merchandise in the future. According to what the production staff said, he also went straight to Fritz's storage areas to get to the valuable antiques that had never been shown on the show. When talking about work so soon after Fritz's death, Wolfe seemed surprisingly focused and not at all sad, according to several crew members. When police checked Wolfe's home and office, they found a hidden safe with several unlabeled prescription bottles that turned out to contain the same drugs that were found in Fritz's system. The most damning thing was a diary that was found in Wolfe's travel bag. In it, he had written a lot about how angry he was at Fritz. Some of the entries were from years ago, using more and more hostile words. Just a few weeks before Fritz died, he wrote, "Fifth thinks he can come back and take half the spotlight again. He doesn't remember that the show would not happen without me. He has turned into a problem. I can only save what I've made in one way, the network tells me." Wolfe was in court for 6 weeks, but he seemed surprisingly calm. He sat quietly next to his lawyers as the prosecutors explained how he had carefully planned Fritz's death. The jury heard proof that he had been looking into poisons that are impossible to track down and ways to make a murder look like it was caused by natural causes. His search records on the internet showed that he had looked up questions like, can drug interactions after death be found? How to make someone's death look like it was caused by problems with a stroke. The prosecution said Wolfe killed Fritz because he thought Fritz's health problems were a good reason to do it. People who used to work on American Pickers said they saw troubling changes in the relationship between Wolfe and Fritz in the years before Fritz quit the show and later died. One production assistant told the judge that she had heard Wolfe demanding full artistic control over heated arguments about the show's future direction. The assistant said that he told Frank that he no longer had the right to equal bills because of his health problems. Several witnesses said Wolfe was becoming more and more controlling, often saying bad things about Fritz to network execs and cutting him off from longtime antiques friends. Danielle Colby's emotional statement may have been the most moving. She reluctantly went on the stand for the prosecution. She talked about how she had to hold back tears as she talked about telling Wolfe what he did to Fritz. She said, "I saw that Mike had become obsessed with being the only face of American Pickers. He got defensive and angry when I asked him about making peace with Frank. He told me to stop getting involved in things that don't concern you." Colby said that he found disturbing notes about Fritz's medication plan in Wolfe's office and asked Wolfe about them. Wolfe said that he was only worried about Frank's health. The defense team tried to make it seem like Wolfe and Fritz had a bond that was misunderstood and that Wolfe had really tried to make things right with Fritz before he died. They called in executives from the networks to testify about Wolfe's public comments in support of Fritz's recovery. But Fritz's personal doctor said that even though Fritz was worried about his health, he was optimistic about his recovery and was making plans to start his own antiques business. This evidence badly weakened the theory. The doctor also said that he had never given Fritz such high doses of the drugs that were found in his blood. Wolfe's carefully kept calm started to break during cross-examination. He got angry with the prosecutor when she asked him straight if he had given Fritz the medicines. "Do you know what it's like to make something happen while someone else takes the credit? To smile for the cameras while everyone else thinks he's just as important to the show's success?" Because of his temper tantrum, his defense team had to call a break, but the damage had already been done. Later, the jurors said that this moment was very important to their decision-making because it showed how angry Wolfe was at Fritz even though he had left the show years before. When forensic accountants talked about strange changes they saw made to Wolfe's business structure, it became clear that they were after money. Wolfe had been quietly changing his businesses in the months before Fritz's death so that they could take over his intellectual property if he became unable to work or died. He also bought Fritz a business insurance policy that would pay out $5 million to Fritz's company if something happened. Prosecutors also said that Wolfe had set up several fake companies that Fritz didn't know about and was putting valuable items into these companies, which together had assets worth over $2 million. The jury only talked about the case for 4 hours before returning with a guilty decision. When the judge said he would be locked up for life without the chance of release, everything went horribly wrong. Wolfe had been calm throughout the whole trial, but all of a sudden he jumped up and started yelling, "You don't get it. He was going to make everything worse. He was going to ruin my reputation." He charged across the defense table and knocked over water cups and legal pads. The bailiffs ran after him, but he was already swinging wildly towards Fritz's family before they could stop him. There were screams and pushes for the exits from the hall. As Wolfe got away again, he grabbed an old walking stick that had been brought in as proof and swung it around like a weapon, hitting one of the bailiffs in the shoulder. "The American Pickers was my work." His screams went up as 3 more police officers knocked him to the ground. "It was my life's work." As police tried to restrain Wolfe, he continued to fight fiercely, kicking and screaming about betrayal. The judge was taken out of the courtroom. When Wolfe tried to attack Fritz's sister, who was at the punishment, security had to walk her out of the room. "I got everything I deserved." He screamed it was my show, as they finally put his hands behind their backs. The most shocking part was when Wolfe looked at Danielle Colby, who was in the hall, straight in the eyes and yelled, "Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth about Frank." Colby did not look back, clearly upset, while other crew members started crying. The trial has split up the American Pickers family, with some sticking up for Wolfe and others giving evidence against him. Court papers showed that Wolfe had been deliberately turning crew members against Fritz in the years before he died. This caused major rifts in the production team that may never heal. As security staff tried to keep Wolfe under control, he continued his rant, giving away even more shocking information. He yelled that he was going to start his own show. "I was out of date," he said, and the network wanted him back. Reporters in the courtroom said it looked like something out of a dream. At least 3 people were hurt, including Wolfe's own defense attorney, who was hit by a flying water pitcher. They had to drag him out of court, but he kept yelling about betrayal and his reputation, telling him that Fritz had planned to kill him. Later, lawyers said that his violent outburst pretty much ruined any chance of an appeal because it went against his defense team's case that he was just a misunderstood businessman who wasn't violent. Wolfe's old friends and co-workers came forward with stories about him in the days after his meltdown in court that shed new light on his character. Thomas Reynolds, who used to create American Pickers, said that Wolfe would get very angry behind the scenes when things didn't go his way. Reynolds said that he kept up this perfect friendly picture on camera, but when he wasn't on TV, he could be scary, especially for new employees. His whole mood would change when the cameras quit rolling. Others said that he was becoming more and more anxious over the past few years, sure that Frits was planning to come back to TV with a different show. It's shocking everyone who works in reality TV about this case. Millions of people around the world watched American Pickers, but the show's future is now unclear. The History Channel took down all of Wolfe's shows and said they were shocked and sorry for Fritz's family's loss. Some big companies have pulled their support, and it's still not clear what will happen with the show.